Today's subject is about immigration versus immigrants. What is the difference? How does it matter? Why is it becoming such a sensitive subject? Do we need it? Do we not need it? Does it really matter? Does it not really matter? What is exactly going on in Canada? Why is there so much of hate and anti-immigration sentiment, which is doing the round, which is making the waves? All of this, right? So this is what we're talking about today. And of course, this is also a weekly roundup, so we will have that part of the process as well. Immigration is people moving to another country, geographical boundaries, crossing the geographical boundaries in order to live there permanently, ideally permanently. And immigrants are basically people who are doing this, rather who are actually involved in this process. So basic distinction, basic difference there: one is the process, second is the people that are involved in that process. Why is it a problem? For Canada, it cannot be a problem. For Canada, it should never be a problem because Canada needs immigration. I can sense some Canadians already coming into the stream and say, oh, well, we don't need immigration. We have already too much of it. We don't want it anymore. No, of course you do. You need immigration, whether you like it, you don't like it, because who's going to be paying the taxes, which is paying for our pensions, our old age funds, our healthcare, the roads, the economy, you name it, everything. Canada is one of the most heavily taxed country in the world. One of the most, I mean, not the most, but one of the most. By direct and indirect taxes, we land up paying approximately between 42 to 52% of our income into taxes, right? Direct, indirect taxes. Through your salaries, through your annual paychecks, you pay a hefty amount upfront, and then you pay a lot of it through indirect taxes. And of course, all those taxes then go towards significant benefits, which are spread across the board for different people, for different communities, for different sections. And this is how the game is being played. So if you don't have enough people to pay those taxes, then those benefits shrink, and then people who have or who are now at the receiving end of those benefits don't get it. So that's one of the reasons why in immigration you have a preference for younger people, not for the older people. So in express entry you get less points for age, you get more points if you're younger, less points if you're older. After 45 you don't even get any points in express entry. Well, this is one of the reasons. The younger you are, the longer you will ideally be paying taxes. Therefore, you're welcome. And that's how the game is played. The country gives you benefit by allowing you to live in this country and obviously call it home. And in return, you contribute, you pay, you become part of the country, you become part of the community, and assimilate in every manner possible. The problem is not everybody is able to do that. And this is where the problems happen. So Canada, the native land, where in most cases, most government and speeches, events will start with the acknowledgement that this land belongs to the natives and that we are living on this land by way of treaties, by way of agreements, which the natives have ever agreed to. So they have allowed us to use this land. They have allowed us to share this land with them, but it doesn't belong to us, right? It belongs to the natives. That's the treaties that we all live in Canada by. And therefore, technically, everybody is an immigrant. Everybody has immigrated at some point of time, except for the natives, because that's their land. And there is always this debate, right? So if non-Asians are the Canadians, then what are the Asians? And Asians come from Asia. And the non-Asians who are also immigrants in Canada, where are they from? Probably Europe, right? Largely Europe. And that's where it all started, because Canada being across the pond, when we call it pond, Atlantic Ocean, and the Europeans were able to, when they were on their exploration trips, were able to make this trip across the pond fairly faster rather than people coming across from Asia. And therefore, you had more settlers here from Europe who came to Canada, who obviously did a lot. Again, mind you, there is no way of downplaying the contributions of the European settlers who came into Canada and who established the country, who made the country to what it is, who have a huge contribution in trying to sort of sort out how the Canadian economy is where it is today. Okay. And then, of course, we are the global people of the world, right? Everybody from different countries slowly started making their way. We've had the incident of uh, when in early 1900s the first Sikh who arrived in Canada, part of the forces, and then decided to stay back. And then there was this ship from India which came, and that was not allowed. People were not allowed to disembark. Then there was another incident of some transport ships from China coming in. Those people were not allowed to come disembark and then land in Canada. The ships were sold. The ships were sent back, and there was even I'm actually forgetting my history lessons. Should have been more prepared, but then that's where the sleep comes in. Yeah, there was also this new rule that unless you came to Canada through one direct route, something of that sort, you couldn't actually arrive in Canada or become an immigrant, kind of a thing. And these are all being created to avoid certain countries, certain nationals to come to Canada and become immigrants. And all those rules were made. And slowly, of course, we started dispelling those beliefs, those systems. Whether you call it racism, you call it bias, but then that racism, this skin color, this differentiation because of whether I'm brown, whether I'm black, whether I'm white, whether I'm what are the colors? Grays, you can't have grays, right? But this skin color has been rooted in the sense of racism for I don't know how long now, centuries probably. And this has always been one of the biggest the biggest contentions issues, hold on, contentious issue, and been debated so many times. It has created civil wars. It has created so many issues otherwise. But at the end of the day, we are what we are, right? It's just not about the skin color. It's also what's inside here. It's also what's inside here, and that's where people make homes, and that's how the lives are formed, and the economies are formed, and the countries are formed. And I guess over a period of time, the initial reason that Canada was not very welcoming to individuals outside the European continent, that slowly was dispelled, and eventually you had people fairly consistently coming into Canada from Asia. And that was in the 50s and the 60s, but of course not a big number, because it was still very difficult for people to move around. Ships could take forever. uh, the diseases on the ships, or the living conditions on the ships, it was not a very pleasant journey to make, so it was still not easy. It was only after the 80s and 90s that things have become much more easier for people to travel, for people to come to Canada, and Canada started making a name for itself. Early 2000s, I guess, was also the time when this was also something which started catching up. 2010 saw many more international students coming into to Canada. And if you speak to individuals who came to Canada in early 2010s and late 2000s, you will find that a lot of people were living in localities in Canada where people hadn't seen browns earlier, or they hadn't seen Indian people before, or they hadn't seen certain Asian communities before. It was that far in between. And slowly, and I'm going to rush this up so that we get to the main point, that slowly and slowly more Asians were around here, more Africans were around here, and that's how the ball started rolling. uh, 2015, actually, between 2010 to 2015, that was the time when immigration had also started catching up. Conservatives were around in terms of the political parties, and immigration was becoming something which was really being more desired. So actually, after 95 to between 95 to 2000, that's when actually it started catching up. You had the point system forever, for quite some long time, and they were able to identify people based on the point system: age, education, work experience. This is primarily how it mattered. It used to take 4 years for the applications to be processed. You would just mail them, they'd wait for it to come back. After about 2010, and that's where more and more and more international students started coming, Canadian experience became relevant, and suddenly they had identified by now already that there were some segments of people who were more here, and they wanted the others more, and therefore priority occupations became at the forefront. So now you had some 47 lists of occupations. If you were eligible, if you had the work experience, you could come to Canada as a permanent resident. So all those changes happened during the course of time. And then came 15, when you had the express entry. Express entry also then became very popular, but not so much, because early 2015, 2016, 20, I'm sorry, I'm giving you the history lessons because it's very important to have context, and therefore I'm rushing through this. So 2015, 2016, 2017, the scores remained very, very high. You're talking about upwards of 700, and part of that was because job offers at that point of time until November 2016 would give you 600 points in express entry. You can imagine, you had a job offer, you could walk right through. And therefore, after 2016 November, when the job offer points were reduced, the express entry scores started coming down, to the effect that first time in Canadian express entry history, you had the lowest score at 413 on the 31st of May. Now, what all of this did is that it basically exploded. 42,000 or 44,000 was the number of people in the express entry pool in 2017 on 31st of May. Score was 413. I think number of invitations were 3,500 kind. So you can imagine how many people got invited. But what it also did was it also exploded the whole immigration scene. More people were now interested. The communities across the world, India probably, of course, one of the top ones, Pakistan, not to be left far behind, Middle East, there were some consultants who were selling. I mean, I remember I was in Dubai and I was approached in 2001 by an immigration consultant. I don't want to take the names, and they were offering pathways to come to Canada, as in you pay a big hefty sum, and it was not a standard way. Again, there were also those agents who were offering those things. And all these agents then started seeing this as a great way of encouraging more people to come. Of course, the colleges, institutions in Canada also saw this as a great poster. And they made immigration and the express entry the poster child, saying that if you come to Canada as an international student, all you needed was complete your education, get 1 year of experience, and bang, you could become PR. And nobody was saying it out literally that, hey, you come to Canada as an international student, you will become PR, but it was always implied. And because it was implied, and more people bought into the story, and you had the then explosion of the number of international students who started coming to Canada. Mind you, though a huge part of that was from India. And again, why? Because India is one of the largest populated countries in the world. We have a young population, we have literate population, and of course, English is also one of the languages that we speak, and speak quite well in most cases. And therefore, they became the ideal candidate to get. And of course, India has got a very good developed overseas education platform, as in the banks will give you the loans quite easily, fairly easily, in comparison to lots of other countries in the world where you cannot get education loan that easily, or you can't get it at all. So therefore, all these educational institutions went out to India, started getting more and more international students, to the effect that now at about 2021, 2022, they realized they were having phenomenal number of international students, to a point we were almost touching, probably even exceeding 1 million international students in Canada, and a large portion of that from India alone. So what happens when things like this happen, right? So this is giving you a bit of a background, a bit of a context of where I'm coming from. And when we talk about immigration and immigrants, now, while temporary residents are not immigrants, but they do add to the population. Canada crossed 40 million people population in 2023, I think. And a large content, a big portion of that is also temporary residents, which comprises of international students, foreign workers. Foreign workers who got transferred from being international students also have a huge role to play in this entire game. Why? Because since 1950s, the settlers, I'm calling them settlers, but immigrants, and then had become Canadians, of course, realized that a lot of jobs they don't want to do, or they can't do, or they're unwilling to do, or they just do not have enough people to do. So, of course, then came the expatriate workforce, who initially were temporary residents and eventually over a period of time were allowed to become permanent residents. And they always needed workers. They always needed labor force in order to do so many activities. That just it's like with any country. One of the reasons why India has become one of the huge economic powerhouses of the world is because of the population. The reason why China is a huge economic powerhouses of the world is because of the population. When you have so much of population at your disposal, you obviously are able to afford cheap labor, and when you're able to afford cheap labor, it helps you, bring down the economies of scale. And that's what countries like in Europe, in North America, they struggle with, because you don't have that kind of labor force. The reason why things are so expensive in Canada is because you don't have that kind of labor force, and therefore you're relying upon the expatriate foreign worker force who's in Canada as temporary residents and then eventually permanent residents. And therefore, all these issues started coming in from 2020, 2022, where more and more and more international students coming in. And then COVID hit. And then suddenly we realized that businesses shut down, businesses closed down, so many people in the country. Uh, what are we going to do about this? And then things started taking a turn. The sense of why do we so the Canadians were always in favor of, if you see all the census reports, all the survey reports from 2015 onwards, and I'm not going too far back, I'm just going to go to 10 years back in history in this case, that if you take all the survey reports and you see, in most cases, Canadians were in the favor of immigration. And most largely, right? Of course, not everybody, largely, Canadians were in favor of immigration until that sentiment started slowly changing, especially after COVID. A lot of things were contributing to this factor. And whether it is the behavior of temporary residents community at large, whether it was behavior of uh, individuals from certain communities at large, but collectively, slowly, small incidents which otherwise were isolated, but collectively they started bringing things together and they started making it very, very difficult. More Canadians are complaining that their children can't find a summer job. I agree. I have a young daughter. I have a young niece. I've got two young boys as well. But the young boys are permanent residents. They found a job. My daughter, obviously, school and then through the college, struggled to find a summer job. But that's understandable. And then that's a big complaint, right, from the Canadians, as in their children, the young children, are not able to find summer jobs or after school jobs. So therefore, you immigrants are taking away our jobs. That is one of the biggest thing that you actually hear in terms of complaints when it comes about anti-immigration sentiment. Second very big one is the increase in the crime rate. That that it's the not only Indians or Asians for that matter, but the crime has really gone up, and that has gone up, and again being largely blamed to immigrants. Now, when I'm saying immigrants, I don't mean people who have come to Canada as permanent residents. I'm talking about immigrant population at large. Of course, the Canadians don't want to see themselves as immigrants because they feel they have been here forever, so that's why they are now part of the country. But so they see everybody else who are not the way they look as immigrants, not themselves, of course, right? So that's the basic difference in their own psyche, which they need to change. I hope they do it at some point of time, but until that happens, so everybody who is not like them is an immigrant. Of course, they themselves are Canadians, but a large portion of who is being seen as the, I wouldn't say enemy, but as undesirables, I think that's the correct word, are largely the worker population, the student population, and they are getting the biggest hit. They're getting a lot of hate. So many instances of outright racism, outright bias, outright expression of hate against individuals who don't look like them. I think just day before yesterday, there was a report where in Ajax, one Muslim woman who was running her own restaurant, minding her own business, was beaten up by these individuals, and again considered as hate crime. Then there was this incident of a young Indian student who, in a, I think, was it a train station or a bus station, was physically assaulted by somebody else, again in the name of you being the outsider. Then there are so many incidents. I'm sure lots of Chinese students, lots of Vietnamese students, lots of Korean students will also be able to We will also be able to agree on this particular note, where they get called out unnecessarily by individuals, again in the name of you being different than we are, and therefore you don't deserve to be here. We don't, obviously. But all these people who have all this kind of hate and who say that you are taking away our jobs, when the time comes, they are not willing to take up those jobs, right? And as I was telling you earlier, immigration forms the large portion of cheap labor, and I'm saying it cheap, and I don't mean it in a derogatory manner, is because these are the same words being used by Mark Miller, Sean Fraser, Marco Mendicino in different ways. And probably they have come out and said it, and but this has always been understood. Student population, not only in Canada, across the world, helps the economy by providing that cheap labor. International students, unfortunately, are the only ones who are willing to slog themselves, slog the butts off. They're willing to do the kind of jobs that nobody else is willing to do. They're willing to do long hours, do long shifts, work on holidays, get physically, sexually, verbally abused, and still willing to put their heads down and continue with it. Why? Because they need the money, they need the job, they need the work experience, and everybody around them takes advantage of that. Everybody, including the government, including the economy, including the countries, including the immigrants, including the so-called citizens of that country, and including the people who might be from their own country, who have come before them and now feel that it's their right to now abuse them. So I guess international students across the world are always in that situation, are put in that situation to do that. But if you start removing that component away, and that's what's going to happen, right? I mean, and that's happening already in Canada. So after listening to all these things, the government decided, okay, we need to sort of curtail the immigration, we need to push the immigration down, and therefore they came up with all kinds of, again, so after having messed up in the first place, and if you haven't seen my messed up video, you should watch it. So after the Marco Mendicinos and the Sean Frasers, they made all these kind of ridiculous decisions, sometimes under pressure, probably, sometimes I do not know what they were thinking, sometimes with the band-aid solution. They brought in all the solutions, brought in extra people, more international students, more workers, spouses, postgraduate work permits, extensions of work permits, 75 CRS, TR to PR, you name it, all these different things. And then they brought in more and more and more people, because when they did the 75 CRS, when they did the TR to PR, that encouraged more international students to come to Canada, because they thought Canada is handing out PRs like candies on Halloween, right? So why not? Let's just go in. Collectively, then they realized, by the time Mark Miller came into the picture, they realized that it's already made a mess out of. So now they need to put their foot down, push things down, and therefore they came up with the study permit restrictions, therefore not having, or rather putting a cap on how many study permits, how many international students can be admitted into Canada. They came up with the understanding of who can become an international student, what will be the approval rate, visit visas being clamped on, etc., etc. And of course, postgraduate work permits restrictions, spouses open work permit restrictions. Earlier they let it loose, now they were trying to hold this back. And I'm not sure if you have realized or if you have heard, colleges, universities already facing the heat. They are cutting down on the programs, they are firing staff, they're compressing their facilities. International students pay up to 4 times more than what a domestic student pays in Canada. But that's not only in Canada. You go to the UK, it's the same. You go to Australia, it's the same. But again, I understand the benefit goes to the citizens, to the permanent residents who are in those countries, and they obviously are paying for it by way of their taxes, which is going to the government, who is then funding these institutions. International students are buying a right to get that education from that institution for whatever the reason is. Now, whether it's worth buying that right or not, I do not know. That's a different debate, but that's what they're doing. So there's a difference in the fee that they're paying. So educational institutions in Canada became used to such malai, or such cream of money that they could make. The heads of these departments, the heads of these organizations were getting millions of dollars in bonuses, because suddenly the institutions were so profitable. 90% of their student population was international students, and they loved it. They wanted more and more international students, because they were paying so much more money, and they could, then obviously give themselves hefty bonuses. Now they are facing the heat. Now they don't know what the hell to do. Now the salaries are being cut down, people are being fired, the courses are being compressed. They have to now reduce the number of hours they can actually teach, and it's creating a big problem. And now the lobbies are coming out. They're lobbying at the back end, they're lobbying with the government, they're trying to tell the government, you got to get these international students back, otherwise we're going to have a problem. You will have to start funding us again. Ontario had reduced the funding to the institutions because they knew international students were paying so much of money. So now they're going back to the governments asking for the funding back, and government obviously don't want to spend more money that they had already not allocated for these things. So please take note of this. Wait few months, and very soon you will see international students making a comeback, because it's not only the educational institutions, it's also the businesses. Now every time people complain, I can't find a job because unemployment is so high, these are the ones who are unwilling to go outside the suburban areas. They're unwilling to go outside the urban areas. They're unwilling to go into the communities, into the small towns, into the cities where there aren't too many people. They're unwilling to do that. And because they're unwilling to do that, because they'll have to work harder, the life is going to be slightly different. You will not have the nightlife. You will not have the young and dundas dancing around and prancing around kind of a thing. Therefore, you don't want to do it. And because you don't want to do it, you don't find jobs. And it's not only with the immigrants or the international students or the temporary foreign workers. It's also with the Canadians. Because you're now all set where you are and you want to be able to find jobs easily where you are. But I have to ask this question, and this has been pricking me a lot. So if there were no international students, if there were no temporary foreign workers, even in Tim Hortons, even if KFC, even if McDonald's, all the fast food chains, first of all, I'm not sure if all of them will be able to run their businesses anymore. And then there are this narrative made that if these businesses cannot run their business without foreign workers, then they should just close down. Well, if all the businesses should close down, what the hell happens to the economy? I mean, I'm sorry, I'm doing this kind of stupid mimicry, silly on that one. But if all the businesses have to then close down, then who the hell is going to be running the economy, and who's going to giving you more jobs, and who's going to be providing you services? So this silly and stupid narrative that if the businesses have to run only because of the temporary foreign workers, then they should close down. Well, it doesn't work like that. I'm not sure who has to tell these guys or who has to teach them basic business understanding or basic economies or basic knowledge of economy. But for some reason, they keep having this narrative. So if international students, foreign workers don't work, who's going to be working in the agricultural farms? Who's going to be working in those factories, in the processing plants? Who's going to be working? Okay, you will say, I am willing to pay extra for my Tim Hortons or my Timmy's. You are not, because the minute Timmy's will increase their prices, because now they have to pay more for the Canadian who wants $25 per hour salary instead of a foreign worker who is willing to do it at a $16, $17 an hour salary and willing to put in 12 hours or 10 hours and willing to work on weekends and holidays, etc., etc. Whereas the Canadian is not. So the Tim Hortons will no longer be 24 hours, will probably shut down by 6 in the evening, will probably not be able to give you a coffee at 149 or 159 or whatever the price is, and you will be the ones who will be complaining. So make up your mind, because you've done that before. You've complained before. That now you go to a restaurant, if it's in a far out stretch, and you try to get service, you can't, because they don't have that many workers over there. It's the same thing. Now this year, hundreds and thousands of permits have been expiring from the last year onwards, and will continue to expire, because all those postgraduate work permit extensions expiring, all those work permits expiring, study permit extensions expiring, lots of people who no longer have an option expiring. They're all not everybody is going to be staying in Canada illegally, right? I mean, of course, not everybody wants to be in Canada illegally. I mean, like, yeah, Canada is nice, Canada is all that jazz, but it's not all that great that you want to be here illegally. I mean, does that even make sense? Would you want to be here illegally? I mean, how long would you want to be here illegally? Always with the fact and fear that somebody might, get hold of you and then throw you out of the country anyways. Thankfully, they brought on the new rule of asylum. So basically, if you've already lived in Canada for 1 year after 2020 June, you can no longer file a claim for asylum. Good job, Canada. I mean, thankfully, that will remove a lot of people who have been making fake asylum claims or who thought that was an option. So now you don't have the option to make those. You've already done the dummy extension, you've already done the restoration, you've already done the visitor record, and that you'll be living here now as a visitor. You're doing cash jobs, but the CBSA is now hunting people down who are doing cash jobs. I mean, there have been reports of raids here and there. So eventually you have to live your life, right? You cannot constantly be living here in Canada because an immigration agent, not a consultant, not a lawyer, but an immigration agent told you that they will find you a way to continue being in Canada. It doesn't work like that. And the sooner you realize, the better it is. And if you all start leaving, and a lot of you start leaving, very soon Canada is going to realize that, hey, we need the foreign workers back. We need the international students back. Now, this time, hopefully, they will be smarter in choosing who and how and from where they bring people in, and how they conduct their background checks, how they make sure people are not committing fraudulent activities. We've all heard about that Brijesh Mishra guy, right? 700 fake job offers. And then in 2024 itself, IRCC, as per their report, has claimed that they identified 10,000 fake and fraudulent letters of acceptance from different universities who people have used to make applications. People are still getting fraudulent letters of acceptances and submitting an application with the expectation that they will get through. Why would you be doing those stupid things? But apparently people won't learn the lesson that they have to be taught the hard way. So when all of this is happening, international students will make a comeback, foreign workers will make a comeback, and again we go back to square one, where they will start doing those jobs again, and Canadians will complain that their children can't find the summer jobs. And then again something will happen, and again we will restrict those numbers. Again the jobs will be available, but no Canadians will want to do it for $17 an hour. And again we will want. So you see the cycle, vicious cycle, it goes on. But having said that, why do immigrants get a bad name? And I have got a couple of things to show you, right? So first thing and foremost, when you come out of your country into a different country, the idea and the reason why Canadians are beginning to dislike the temporary immigrant population is because people are not willing to assimilate. Now, you are the ones who are coming to a new country. And because you are the ones who are coming to a new country, you cannot expect the new country that you're coming to change to your conditions and requirements. If that was the requirement, then you should have just stayed where you are, right? I mean, wherever you're coming from, just stay, because if you want the same conditions from where you're coming, then why come to a better place and spoil it and then make it to from where you're coming? Because there was a reason why you left where you're coming from, right? Any reason, financial, freedom, different air, different politics, different civil statuses, whatever that might be, you left, right? And because you left that, that's why you chose to come to Canada. So when you've come to Canada, why are you trying to make it just like where you were back home? I never understand that. And if somebody of one of you knows that, then please. I understand the comfort in familiarity. I understand that, right? But at the end of the day, you are choosing a new country for the reason and the values that this new country stands for. And shouldn't you be looking to assimilate? Shouldn't you looking to adopt the traditions, that the country, what it stands, the values that it has, and make it your own? And therefore you become part of this country rather than trying to change the country to become like you. I have a couple of videos to show you. I mean, it's interesting. I just took them off the internet, but surprisingly, you tell me, and you watch it and you tell me, okay? I'm not going to be saying.
Can someone please tell me how to sleep through this? And this is just the start. Welcome to Brampton, and this noise can be heard miles away. This is 100% Canada.
Okay, so in this particular one, what is happening is that I think this is the Garba season, right? The Navratri season, where the entire street, I'm sure it was done with permission, but the entire street was taken over to do the Garbas and the Dandiyas. And lots of noise and lots of dancing and lots of music, which is all good in the name of traditional introduction to my culture. All good. But do you have to do it in a residential area on the street where people who are not from your traditions and your cultures and your background also have to bear that loud noise and that loud everything? Wouldn't you be better off finding a community center and doing it over there without making a nuisance for everybody else? But I guess not. Then
When
take a
you
look at
came
this one as
to
well.
Canada to study, but you,
Tell me, where else do you see this? Again, all in the name of introducing you to my culture. All good. I'm with you on that. You dance on young and dandas, you dance on the streets, you want to show how happy you are, all good. But when you turn this into a nuisance value, then, and if people then start, you know, shitting on you and start showing dislike or hatred towards you, then don't blame them. Okay, don't blame them for saying things that they are saying and then you getting all upset about it. I have a couple of other things. Okay, let me see if I can find that one. Where did it go? Yeah, uh, look at this one. I got a the reason why I'm showing you all of this is because how immigrants, in all their gust and glory, in trying to show their traditions, their culture, their whatever, have now managed to, I mean, everybody knows Brampton and Surrey in BC, Brampton in Ontario. And both the cities are actually quite nice. Brampton, I love Brampton for the way the city is. It has been developed quite nicely. It's quite large, it's quite wide and everything. But the reputation it has got, horrible. Surrey, the reputation it has managed to get, horrible. Uh, and what gets a reputation of a place for what it is, right? It's the people. And why? Because people have been behaving in certain manner. I mean, if you drive around in Brampton, you would know what I'm saying, in terms of suddenly you will know that you are in a different city because of the way things are happening over there, the way the people are driving all over themselves, right? And I mean, I'm not trying to, again, don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to uh, pick on any specific community. I myself I'm an Indian in my roots. I love India. There's no way I can get that out of my head or my skin. But at the end of the day, sometimes when I see, because what happens is, as a citizen or from wherever you came, you are now an ambassador of that country or of that community or of that place. So whatever religion I belong to, whatever faith, with whatever background, whatever culture, whatever country I belong to, I represent it, no matter. And whenever I go to a different country, I now become an ambassador of my country. How I behave, how I talk, how I conduct myself, it will all start reflecting on my community, my faith, my religion, my culture, my country. And people will start making uh, assumptions, will start making their sentiments, their thoughts, their emotions about the background that I'm reflecting based on the way I am conducting myself. They will start making this impression that they have of this place. For example, in one of the I think sports events, I think it was one of the soccer matches or football matches, there were a huge contingent of Japanese spectators who came to that stadium. It was not in Japan. I think it was in Qatar last year, a year back, for the World Cup. And after the match was over, the Japanese spectators actually cleaned the whole aisle, the row, in the stadium. They didn't have to, but they did. And they carried the trash with them and they dumped it where it needed to be. And that made big scene, that made a big video, that made a big advertisement of how civilized and how respectful Japanese are. So they say, right, the distinction between a person who's ethical is that they do the right thing when nobody's watching, when nobody's going to give them a brownie points for, going to give them awards for. And when you do the right things, then that's where your integrity is really high. That's when you're ethical. And these individuals were able to establish that their culture is strong, that their respect for surroundings is really, really strong. And therefore, when we come out and do things which is pretty much hooliganism, if you want to call it, then how do you think people are going to think about us? It's a food for thought. But when we talk about immigration, I can tell you today that immigration in Canada is not going to end. You could be a Canadian and you can shit on me for this one, you can hate me for this one, but Canadian immigration is not going anywhere. And I'm saying this because, hey, I'm also doing this as a business. I'm in this profession. I'm a licensed immigration consultant, and I know I want to protect my bread and butter as well. But that's besides the point. What I can do, I can protect. What I can't do, I mean, what is not in my control, I can't. But I can tell you today, Canadian immigration is not going anywhere. Yes, it may change, and it may change for good, hopefully, with the new prime minister, with new immigration minister, who we haven't heard from at all. I do not know what she's doing, but I hope it is changing for good, and I hope it continues to change for good. But as immigrants or as temporary residents of this country, in this country, I can only request you to be more aware of your surroundings, to be more aware of how you conduct yourself, because everybody is watching, everybody is judging. And you can say it doesn't impact me, but it does. It impacts you. It impacts me. And now, even if I'm a citizen, even if I'm a Canadian, it impacts me how you are behaving. Why? Because the way people perceive you, they perceive me as well. And therefore, the way I behave, I also reflect with my conduct on you. And therefore, all of us, everybody collectively should be more watchful with the way they behave, the way the way they act, with the way they carry out their businesses. And forget about racism, forget about bias, forget about what happens to immigration or not. Just as at the pure humane level, at the pure downright level of being a human being, I guess being more kind, being more polite, being more respectful, being more tolerant and accepting is the way to go. And that probably will then make us better ambassadors from where we come, and that's how it's going to be. But for that, this is all I have to say on this particular subject. We haven't even started our weekly roundup, but then let's get on with this one very, very quickly, because I know tons of questions here. We'll have to get to those as well. PNP draws happened with Manitoba, with Alberta, and I'm going to rush through them because if you got the invitation, congratulations. If you wanted to check them out, then obviously please head over to their website. You'll find that information. This one is a big one. Ontario has launched the new employer portal, and on this new employer portal, what now your employer needs to do is create their account. Once they create their account, they will create the job offer. Once they create the job offer, they will then have to give you the PIN or the code number. Based on that code number, you, if you're eligible, will then be able to create your expression of interest. The good thing with this whole change in the portal is that this will allow more people to get invitations and use them. Earlier, a lot of people were getting ITAs, but they could just not use them because they were not eligible or their employers are not supporting them. This way, employers supporting them upfront will give them a better chance of being invited and also being able to submit their application. So I think it's a good way to go about. And this one is your employer portal, which has just been launched 2nd of July. Ontario has updated its eligibility for the early childhood educators and assistants. So if you get invited under the human capital priority stream or the French worker stream, and if you are an early childhood educator and assistant, then know that a bachelor's degree, which is earlier a minimum requirement, will no longer apply to these occupations, which is pretty cool. Quebec revamps skilled worker selection with the new PSTQ model. Again, you will still need to know French. So that's the main aspect here. In other news, we have updated LMIA processing times. I'm sure most of you are not interested at this point of time. The processing times are still high at this point of time. IRCC approved 17,500 criminal rehabilitation cases in 11 years. And it tells you how many people we allowed to come to Canada despite the fact that they did have a criminal record. Doesn't look very nice on the government. Very, very big one. IRCC has changed or will be changing the proof of fund requirement for international students who are choosing to come to Canada. So if you're looking to apply for a study permit after the 1st of September, please know that your proof of fund requirement is now gone up by 2,260. So earlier you required $20,000. Now you will require 22,895. That's the number for a single person, and then the number keeps going up. IRCC is going to launch a new stream for foreign workers, and this is in agriculture and fish processing sectors. More details haven't been launched, more details haven't been announced yet, but I'm going to assume this has to be with the job offer again. IRCC has already launched the summer consultations with regards to their immigration targets, because you remember, right? The immigration targets plan has to be launched on 1st of November. So they're already now looking at different caps, different numbers, talking to different stakeholders to identify their numbers. In the month of June, 7,162 IEC, International Experience Canada. It's not CEC, it's not Express Entry, it's a different program that IRCC runs. It is in conjunction with about 35 or 36 countries, where nationals of those countries can apply under IEC. No, it does not include countries in the subcontinent. So India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, Nepal, these countries are not included part of this IEC. Domestic travel up, international tourism down, which is not a surprise here at all. As you noticed, I was literally running through that particular slide. My editor is not going to be happy, thinking that I didn't even give it a lot of time. But that's primarily what happened this week in Canadian immigration. Nothing much. Next week is a draw week, and I hope we get back to seeing some express entry draws. I know we would love to see a category draw. I also know we would love to see Canadian experience class draw. Whichever one it is going to happen next week, it's going to be interesting, because I know a lot of categories, they haven't seen a draw at all. And I also know that Canadian experience class has just started with their consistent draws, and I'm sure both contingents would really, really be hoping to get this ongoing. Very quickly, a question which says, just want to know if this new PGWP rule affect the current students as well. Well, I'm sure you are referring, as far as the PGWP rule is concerned, well, from what IRCC has done is that they have changed on, I think, 25th of last month. Was it? Yeah, 25th of last month. They introduced new CIP codes for the programs for their field of education, which will become eligible for postgraduate work permits. They have removed some 100 plus fields of education, and they have introduced again 100 plus fields of education. So in order to be eligible, if you had already applied before 25th of June, you would still be eligible to get your postgraduate work permit. But any new applications henceforth, you have to be applying, or you have to be studying only those courses which are as per the CIP list for the eligibility for the postgraduate work permit. Only then you would get the postgraduate. But if you're already a student, you're already applied, and you're already studying in a program which has now been removed from this list, you would still be eligible for postgraduate work permit. So I hope that stands. Okay, let's quickly now take questions, because we don't have too much of time, and I know you guys are really waiting for those questions as well. So and we go doing this very, very quickly. Okay, will I be eligible to apply for express entry profile under federal skilled worker even if I am more than 45 years of age, because of eligibility score more than 67 due to my Canadian experience of 4 years? Well, the point is that if your age is more than 45, and you will not get any points in the selection criteria for your age, as long as you are able to score 67 points, you will be able to create your express entry profile under federal skilled worker. So if that's your question, then the answer is yes. As a federal skilled worker, the requirement is not about the age. The requirement is about 67 points. If you can get 67 points, you will be able to create your profile. Is it mandatory to keep French as your first language in EE profile to become eligible for French draw? I mean, can I keep English as first and French as second to boost my CRS in order to get the French draw ITA? Yes, you can. Because you see, you get extra points for French only in conjunction and combination with the English language. So that's the reason you're getting those extra points. So yes, by all means, if you have more points in English, please keep that as your first language and French as the second language. If you have more points in French, then keep French as your first language and English as your second language. Choose it either which ways, and you will still be eligible in the French category draw when it happens. Does the med exempt policy apply to bridge open work permit? My childcare job needs a medical. Should I get medical done before applying? If not, should I answer no to the question? Will you be getting a medical exam before submitting your application? Well, you should answer yes to that. That will you be getting a medical? You should say no, you are not going to be getting a medical exam because you are not going to get one. But when you are completing your application, you must attach your old medicals and you must add a letter of explanation stating that you have completed your medicals within the last 5 years. You can go onto the IRCC website. You can get the screenshot from the IRCC website, which says that medicals, if completed within 5 years for an application for temporary resident or permanent resident, when being made inside Canada, do not require a new medicals, and that the same medical which have been completed within the last 5 years will be accepted, unless of course you have a condition which is high risk. So then they will ask you to complete a new medicals, but you can say that. But I know a lot of people are concerned. They might want to do a new medicals anyways, but that is entirely your choice. But for any permanent resident and temporary resident application being made from inside Canada, if you have completed your medicals within the last 5 years, you can use the same medicals. You don't need to do it again. Primary is on implied status after postgraduate work permit application, working full-time under tier code 21231. Could spouse open work permit be refused due to the low wage of primary? No. The wages of the primary knock code is a primary applicant is not a question here. The condition and the criteria is that you have a job or you're working in a tier code 0 or 1 or under specific occupations in tier 2 or 3, and that you're being paid. Of course, that is the primary requirement. The wages is not the condition. So no, this cannot be the reason if at all your application gets refused. In IMM 5710, in the country of residence, status is selected as worker. Should I enter the date I started studying or when I applied for work permit? If you are choosing your status as a worker, then you should put the date you started working. Or even in this case, you could even add the day you came to Canada, because that will show that you've been living in the country ever since you came to Canada as a student. You can add a letter of explanation, that doesn't matter. But if you are currently in the country as worker, choose worker and starting date as when you came to Canada as an international student. Does family member include sibling also for bridge open work permit? My sister is a PR. Should I select yes or no to the question, do you have a family member who is a PR? Well, in this question, when it says family member, in all immigration applications, family indicates your dependent children and your partner or spouse. Your siblings are not considered as part of your family for immigration applications. So in this case, if it's your sister who's a PR, you will be choosing it as no. Am I obliged to take the LMIA-based job after PR approval? I got promoted a month before PR and switching could mean a demotion. No, you are not obligated at all. You got points because you had a job offer. There were no conditions attached to your permanent residence. There are no conditions attached to anything at all. So if you wish to work, by all means work. But if you don't wish to work, there is no conditions. You're a permanent resident. You are free to do as you wish. If you don't wish to work, you don't wish to work. Then that was also absolutely fine. Can I enter driver license as a national ID document of India in 5710? Is it compulsory to say yes? Do you have a national ID document? Driving license is not considered as national ID. If you have your Aadhaar card, if you're an Indian, then you can add that. If not, then you can simply say no and move on. It's not a mandatory field to be entered. Showed 5 years foreign experience in study permit form, worked in 3 roles during this period, but didn't break them down. Can I break it now and write an LOE for PR? Yes, as long as you disclose the entire duration of the work experience and the company, then there is no problem in your work. In your PR application, you can break it down. You can show different designations. You can show your different roles that you are working in. Of course, make sure that they match with the knock code that you are choosing. Can I apply for international student stream and foreign worker if I'm not working for an employer, but I only have offer letter for the company? Yes, the answer to both the questions is yes. If you are not working for that company, but you have a job offer from an employer who is willing to support you for international student stream or foreign worker stream, as long as you're eligible, you can absolutely create your expression of interest, no problem. You just get more points if you're already working for the same employer, but that's if you're not working, you don't get those points, but you're still eligible. Yes. Enrolled in a 2-year master's, but I have got waivers for 4 courses, eligible for 3-year work permit or not. My master's will take 16 months. Well, as long as you are completing your master's degree of at least 16 months, then you are eligible for your 3-year work permit plus spouse open work permit. And as long as you're completing a master's, even if it is for 1 year, you are still eligible to get 3-year work permit. I went to India for 2 months vacation, continued working for Canadian company remotely. For this foreign work experience, how should I include in work history? Well, for this, what you will do is you will split your work experience. You will show first you are working in Canada as the location being Canada. Then the 2 months you will show for the same company, location being wherever you were outside Canada. And then again, you will resume your work experience with the same company with Canada as the location. You can always add a letter of explanation as part of your work experience documents. Foreign work experience was from September 2015, but foreign experience was from September 2015, but study permit form filled as August 2011. That's a huge difference, isn't it? From September 2015 to August 2011. But resume, SOP, pay slips, and job letter had correct date. Will be accepted? Yes, that's not a problem, as long as you can explain and you had all other documents in your study permit which mentioned the correct dates, then it should not be a problem. If I was outside Canada working remotely from India for my Canadian employer, I was in India for 5 weeks, out of which 2 weeks were paid vacation. Will these 3 weeks count as foreign work experience? Yes. Any work experience not physically being present in Canada, any work experience that you are not in Canada for that work experience, under authorization of working in Canada, that is all considered as foreign work experience. If you are in Canada working under authorization to work, so you have a work permit and you're working for a Canadian company in Canada, then it's Canadian experience. If it is work experience outside, physically outside Canada, even for a Canadian company, then that is foreign work experience. Just the distinction between where you physically are. 514 CEC, any hopes? Well, I would say it's quite positive at this point of time. Applied for postgraduate work permit, now waiting, got full-time job. Should I inform IRCC? Family permits valid till December. Add them now or after PGWP approval? Applied for PGWP, now waiting, got full-time job. Should I inform IRCC? You don't have to inform IRCC about your job applying for postgraduate work permit, because for your postgraduate work permit, there is no requirement for a job. Family permits are valid till December. Should I add them now? Well, it's entirely up to you. But what happens is if they're valid till December, I would say wait to get your postgraduate work permit first. And the reason for that is if you apply for your spouse open work permit, if you're eligible for that, and if your spouse open work permit gets processed first before your postgraduate work permit does, then your spouse open work permit will be refused because there is no postgraduate work permit to support it. Therefore, if you don't want to take that chance, then wait for you to get your work permit first. What if my profile expires after receiving ITA? Will it affect my submission of documents? The entire purpose of your express entry profile is so that you can get an ITA. Once you get the ITA, the profile ceases to be of any relevance or consequence, because express entry creates another entry in your account, and that is a permanent resident application, also referred to as EAPR, electronic application for permanent resident. And so therefore, if your profile is expiring, not expiring, it doesn't matter, because now you have an ITA and you can continue with your PR application. And you will notice your profile doesn't expire after that. And it doesn't really matter, because as I said, the entire purpose, entire reason why express entry profile even exists is for you to get an ITA. I wanted to ask if a CRS score of 514 would be sufficient to receive an ITA under the experience class. Well, I would say I'm quite positive. I mean, of course, my being positive doesn't help at all, because I'm forever hopeful. We will have to wait and see how IRCC continues to conduct the draws. If they are consistent with their draws, if they do continue with the draws, if they continue with their 3,000, 4,000 kind of invitations, I expect to see 5 and 4 for sure. Can I use my PCC issued in my maiden name for my PR application? If changing it is difficult, what do you suggest? Yes, you can use it. That is not a problem, but make sure you add one and the same person affidavit as part of your application to show variations in your name, and also check the box where it says, have you used a name before, and then mention about your earlier maiden name, and now, mention about your maiden name. One of my bi-weekly pay stubs, I only worked 30 hours. If I work 2 days in 1 week and 3 days in another week, will they still consider it as 1 week? Well, IRCC doesn't have your attendance record. Okay, so they don't know your attendance record. They are checking your record of employment. They are checking your T4s, and they are checking your pay stubs. That is how they establish whether you have the hours of 30 hours per week. So if you're getting a bi-weekly paycheck and if it shows 60, then you are working 60 full time. So they do not have your date by date, day by day attendance record, and they are not going to be checking your individual day record. So as long as it shows 30 hours per week, that's good enough. I got ITA for 3 years Canadian experience, but was outside Canada for 12 weeks, 45 days working remote. Do these count? No, they don't count. IRCC has been specifically and categorically very clear that work experience gained outside Canada does not count as Canadian experience class. You should try and work for extra 45 days in order to compensate for that. And if you still have an ITA, you can still continue with your application. Submit your application only after completing 45 days. Do you get credit for 2 weeks vacation allowance? Yes, if that was paid vacation, you can obviously mention that in your documents. Not mentioned on the reference letter, only title and duties. There is no requirement. I mean, yes, IRCC website says that, but an officer will not refuse your application if your NOC code is not written in your employment documents. All they're looking for is your duties and responsibilities. If that matches with the NOC code, that's good enough. My employer registered for OINP. I got EOI. How can I accept the invitation, and what documents do I need? Can you do a separate video? Yes, we will do a separate video. But if your employer has registered for the employer portal, great. If they would have given you your code, excellent. Then you can create your expression of interest. You don't have an ITA yet. But if your employer has given you the code, you can now go onto the Ontario portal and you can create your expression of interest. When you're creating expression of interest, it will ask you for the code. You will need to enter it in order to proceed to complete your expression of interest. Dheer, nothing there. Manjot says, title mentioned as key holder, and I checked NOC description and duties. 7 to 8 duties matched on my letter. NOC didn't mention, only title and duties. NOC didn't mention. You mean to say the NOC was not mentioned, only title. Title and duties is all that is important. Even title doesn't have to match with the NOC code. What needs to match is the job roles and responsibilities. If majority of your roles and responsibilities are matching, then you should be good, because IRCC, the law, the ministerial instructions, they all indicate that substantial number of duties should match with the NOC code you're choosing. As long as the NOC is established, you'll be fine. According to the recent OIMP draw, home support worker 44101 are eligible under the international student stream employment job offer, or they are only eligible for in-demand skill stream. I am not sure what you are asking about. All occupations are eligible for international student stream and employer job offer stream. Specific occupations are eligible for the in-demand skill stream. The list of occupations for the in-demand skill stream is already mentioned on the Ontario website. So only if you have work experience in those streams, in those occupations, and you have a job offer, you can create your expression of interest. As for an international student stream and the employer job offer stream is concerned, Ontario can choose to conduct draws for specific occupations, but that doesn't mean other occupations are not eligible. Other occupations are also eligible and will get invited if they conduct a draw under the general draw. So there is no specific occupation list for Ontario's international student stream or the job offer stream and foreign worker job offer stream. If you are eligible, please create your expression of interest. You may get invited. Any chance of 511 this week? I doubt it very much. I mean, unless IRCC conducts this mega draw, 10,000 invitations kind of a thing, 511 this week, I'm skeptical. I lost my Aadhaar. Can I say no? Yes, you can say no, and you don't. It's not a mandatory field. Don't worry. PCC validity from India is 6 months only if we are applying from India, correct? For CEC, it is valid until I return to India. Please correct me if I'm wrong. No, you are not wrong. It's absolutely correct. The requirement is that you should have obtained, if India is your country of residence, PCC should be from India and it is valid for 6 months. If India is not your country of residence, you should obtain your PCC while you are outside India, and it remains valid until your next visit to India. And you must mention this as part of your cover letter with the PCC, stating you obtained the police clearance while you were outside the country, you haven't visited back that country, and therefore it should be considered as a valid PCC. Janak says, I did 10-month internship in NOC 1 in India as a part of my bachelor's. I did include it, but not in immigration form. Can I add it in express entry? You did include it in your SOP, but not in immigration form. Well, it's going to be a gray area of how IRCC will treat it, because you had no reason not to include it in your immigration forms. But because you did include it in your SOP and you can prove that, and if IRCC has a problem with this and if they refuse your application, you can take it to the federal court. Now, there are past precedents. There is jurisprudence in this case that judge has ruled that as long as the information was available or as long as the evidence was there in any part of the application, not necessarily in the required area, then it should still be considered. So with that, you can still get away with it. It's still a gray area, because the question is, why didn't you disclose it in your immigration application? But as I said, you may be able to explain, you may be able to get away with it. Can I work remotely for Indian employer and claim those points instead of Canadian job? I would be doing both jobs, but claiming only for one. Remote work experience, as I've already told you earlier as well, at this point of time, continues to be a gray area. IRCC has refused applications in the past where that they say that they are not accepting the remote work experience because the person should have been physically outside Canada for it to be foreign work experience. However, equally, we have also seen tons of applications that have been approved with remote work experience. So you will have to choose the country of where the employer is as your location and then add a letter of explanation showing how this is your foreign work experience. It's a chance that you are taking, but you should be aware of how this is going to be played out. And please ensure that you have very detailed documentation for remote work experience. IRCC has become extremely strict and diligent as far as these work experiences are concerned, because people are creating all kinds of fake foreign work experiences. So for your sake, please make sure that you record and log everything when you're communicating with your employers, your request for leaves, your attendance, your meeting logs, your assignments, your tasks, your email communication. Please keep a record of everything. And of course, pay stubs, bank statements, employment letter, employment contract, which shows that you're going to be working remotely. All of this will become a very essential part of your documentation. Can my employer apply for LMIA through Global Talent Stream if my SOWP extension inland is refused? I am a data scientist. No. So first of all, LMIA is not your application. LMIA is employer's application. Employer is making an application asking if they can be approved to get an approval for an LMIA so they can hire a temporary foreign worker. So it's the employer's application. And if your employer is eligible, of course, they can apply for a GTS LMIA. Once you get the GTS LMIA with your name on it, then you can make an application for a work permit. And yes, even if you have an extension of spouse open work permit refused, if you have a GTS LMIA in your name, you can most certainly apply for a closed work permit. I became out of status. My employer has agreed to provide job offer letter for in-demand skills Ontario job. Should I apply for visitor record? Whether you are eligible for the program or not, and I think there is something in in-demand skills which says that you should have a valid work permit. I'll have to check on that one. Give me a moment. I think you will need to have valid status. But for your status, in your case, you definitely should maintain your status anyways. That goes without saying. So if you have lost your status, that is already a question mark on your eligibility. But please ensure that you do restore your status at the earliest. Oh, why can't I remove this? Hold on. So it says here, if you are applying from within Canada, you must have legal status at the time you apply, and you should maintain the status until the time of nomination. There you go. So that's everything is available on the website, and this is in-demand skill stream on employer job offer in-demand skill stream. So whenever you're looking for this kind of information, always refer back to the website and you will find that information there. Hope this helps. Okay, Krishna Patel, nothing here. Will my experience as a consultant in India be considered for CEC draws? Can I also claim points for my spouse's sibling who is a Canadian citizen? If your spouse is accompanying you in your PR application, then yes, you are eligible to claim the sibling points of your spouse. So if your spouse has a sibling, you get the points. And if your work experience in India was that of a consultant, and can it be included if you are a CEC? Yes, it can be included as a foreign work experience, as long as you're able to provide complete documentation to establish the genuineness of that work experience and its validity. So yes, absolutely, you can claim it. No problem there at all. What things to consider for LMIA-based work permit? The biggest thing is that the LMIA is genuine. Second is to get a job offer. Third is for you to be able to prove that you can actually perform that job through your work experiences and your education and English language results if required. Well, that's all that I have for you guys today. Thank you so much for joining in. It was lovely catching up. Do it again next week, same time. Until then, take care, and I shall see you next time.